Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're tuning in today. We are tackling one of the absolute most pressing challenges in the modern marketplace right now, and that is verifiable trust. Look, we live in a world where it feels like almost every single product on the shelf claims to be saving the planet, right? They just slap a random little green leaf on the box. But how do we, and more importantly, how do regulators and everyday consumers actually know what's true? Well, in this explainer, we're going to decode the exact framework that separates genuine environmental leadership from, just empty marketing fluff. We're looking directly at the international standard that sets the absolute highest bar for environmental claims.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap to bring some order to a very chaotic landscape. We'll be hitting the greenwashing problem, the three types of eco-labels, the Type I gold standard, inside ISO 14024, earning the label, and finally, securing your brand's future.
All right, starting us off with Section 1, the greenwashing problem. Is it really green?
Seriously, think about this for a second. We are constantly overwhelmed by this massive barrage of eco-friendly buzzwords. Whether we're just walking down a supermarket aisle picking up groceries or sourcing materials for a massive global supply chain. Think about the very last time you saw a box proudly proclaiming it was 100% natural or eco-friendly. Did you instinctively trust it? Or did you kind of wonder if they literally just printed the box in green ink and hope for the best? As consumers and regulators are demanding real sustainability, that one simple question, is it really green, has become a huge liability for businesses that just can't back up their claims.
And so, that brings us to the elephant in the room, greenwashing. Greenwashing happens when environmental claims are misleading, exaggerated, or frankly, completely baseless. And the consequences for getting this wrong today are severe. If a company gets caught greenwashing, they instantly lose consumer trust, which, as we all know, is incredibly hard to win back. But even beyond that, the legal risks are just skyrocketing right now. Major markets, particularly the European Union, are drastically tightening up their regulations. So long-term brand damage, it's not just a possibility anymore. It's an active, real-world threat for companies making unverified claims.
Moving right along to Section 2, Types of Eco-Labels, and specifically looking at the ISO 1420 family.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the ISO 1420 family stepped in to establish a clear hierarchy, basically organizing the Wild West of eco-claims into three main types. First, you have Type 2, governed by ISO 14021. This is a self-declared claim. It's like a company just printing recyclable on a package. Its credibility depends entirely on how honest that company is. Then there's Type 3 under ISO 14025. This one is based on a life cycle assessment or an EPD report. Now, it is third-party verified and highly credible, but it's also extremely technical. It's mostly just raw data. And then we have Type 1, governed by ISO 14024. This is a multi-criteria eco-label verified by an independent third party, and it holds the absolute highest level of credibility out there.
When you really put them side by side, the contrast is kind of stark, isn't it? A self-declared Type 2 claim is incredibly vulnerable. It's essentially a company crossing their fingers and saying, hey, trust us. But you compare that against the unshakable strength of an independent third-party verified Type 1 label, where a strict scientific body has actually proven the claim is true. There's just no contest when it comes to mitigating your risk.
Which leads us beautifully into Section 3, the gold standard, Type 1, and why it has the highest credibility.
Because of that immense difference in trust we just talked about, we are focusing exclusively on the hero of our story today, the Type I eco-label. So, what actually makes it the top-tier standard? It comes down to four completely non-negotiable pillars. First, it's voluntary. Businesses actually choose to put themselves through this level of scrutiny. Second, it's a multi-criteria assessment. It doesn't just look at one random environmental factor. It looks at the whole picture. Third, it takes a life cycle-based approach, which we are going to expand on in just a minute. And finally, the absolute clincher, it is independently third-party verified. Those four traits bundled together are exactly what makes a Type I label the gold standard globally.
Let's ground this theory in reality for a second and name some specific labels you might actually recognize. Programs like the EU Ecolabel, EcoCert Eco Detergents, and the Vietnam Green Label, these are all real-world, heavyweight examples of Type 1 eco-labels. When consumers and regulators spot these specific marks, they already know they can trust them because they represent that intense, independent standard we just defined.
All right, Section 4, inside ISO 14024. Let's look under the hood at the standard framework itself.
So how are those elite labels actually created? Well, here's the definition directly from our source material. ISO 14024 establishes the principles and procedures for developing and operating credible Type 1 environmental labeling programs. Now, I really need to clarify a massive misconception right here. A manufacturing company doesn't just go out and get ISO 14024 certified the way they'd get, say, an ISO 9001 quality certificate. Instead, ISO 14024 is essentially the rulebook used by the organizations who create the labels. A business then earns a specific eco-label, like that EU eco-label, that complies with this rigorous ISO 14024 framework. Make sense?
And this standard isn't just some dusty old document sitting on a shelf. Let's see how this builds over time. It has constantly evolved to stay steps ahead of increasingly sophisticated greenwashing tactics. The very first edition dropped back in 1999. Then, crucially, Edition 2 came along in 2018 and introduced incredibly strict new rules regarding the competence of the independent verifiers themselves, along with super strict rules on data quality. And looking to the future, Edition 3 is slated for publication in May 2026, which is going to update the whole standard to perfectly align with the absolute latest global environmental goals.
Speaking of those global goals, a massive, massive part of this framework is life cycle thinking. Evaluating a product under a Type 1 program is definitely not just about checking if the cardboard box is recyclable. No way. It is a true cradle-to-grave analysis. It assesses the environmental impact starting from the very first extraction of raw materials, all the way through the manufacturing, how the consumer uses it, and its final disposal. Because of this incredible thoroughness, ISO 1404 directly supports major UN Sustainable Development Goals. We're talking Goal 13, Climate Action, Goal 14, Life Below Water, and Goal 15, Life on Land.
Moving to Section 5, Earning the Label. Let's walk through the step-by-step roadmap.
Okay, so now that we understand the immense weight behind the theory, how does a business actually, practically, achieve this? Well, first, you've got to choose the relevant Type I program for your specific target market and product type. Maybe that's EcoCert, maybe it's the Vietnam Green Label. Second, you have to meticulously align your product with their published criteria. Third, and this is the heavy lift, you'll very likely need to adjust your internal processes, your materials, or even your supply chain to actually hit those strict targets. Fourth, you gather up all that proof and submit a highly detailed, comprehensive dossier. And finally, step 5, you undergo the rigorous third-party assessment. Passing that independent audit, that is exactly how you earn the label.
And finally, Section 6, Securing Your Brand's Future, the Strategic Advantage.
Look, doing all of that is undoubtedly hard work. But here's exactly why this matters so much to the business leaders watching today. Earning a Type 1 eco-label is a massive strategic advantage. First off, it offers absolute protection against greenwashing accusations because you have the undeniable scientific proof. Second, it provides a massive export advantage. Huge markets like the EU are increasingly favoring, and in some cases legally requiring, products that carry verified Type 1 eco-labels. And third, it builds unshakable consumer trust. You really shouldn't look at a Type 1 eco-label as just another marketing expense. It is an impenetrable shield for your brand and a golden key to unlocking new international markets.
Now, if you are leading a brand right now and realizing, wow, we really need this shield, you don't have to figure it all out in the dark. There are expert partners out there who specialize in helping businesses navigate this exact, highly complex certification journey. According to our source material, consulting, training, and anti-greenwashing advisory services are provided by specialized organizations like STCVN, also known as Staunchly Vietnam, as well as ISC Global and Duc Luong Services. They're out there to help your teams understand the requirements, properly prepare those huge dossiers, and communicate your claims safely. So the crucial point really all boils down to this one brilliant quote from our sources. An eco-label is only valuable when it is credible. In today's modern green economy, trust is literally the ultimate currency. If your label doesn't have the rigorous scientific backing of a standard like ISO 14024 behind it, its value in the market is practically zero. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. I want you to look at your own product packaging, look at your current marketing materials, and ask yourself this. Are you ready to prove your green claims? If a regulator, or even just a savvy, skeptical consumer demanded the raw data behind your eco-friendly badge tomorrow morning, would you have the independent, third-party verified proof to back it up? It is a challenging question, for sure, but understanding ISO 1404 and Type I eco-labels is your first, most critical step to ensuring your answer is a very confident yes. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and keep learning.